Welcome or welcome back. I'm Cassie and this is A Wicked World. Now the story I have for you today is one that you likely have heard about, but you may not know all the details of. I know I certainly didn't until I started to look more into it. I actually began researching this case after I saw some misinformation on social media about it. In my opinion, this mother was 100% guilty for the death of her 2-year-old daughter, and yet she walks free to this day. So what really happened to this adorable little girl back in June of 2008? This is the story of Caylee Anthony. Caylee Anthony was born on August 9th, 2005 to her mother, Caylee Anthony, in Orlando, Florida, though it's unknown who her father is. It's said, however, that Caylee was very smart, sassy, and spunky. She even knew many words in Spanish at her young age, and she enjoyed watching Dora the Explorer and the Pink Panther. Caylee, along with her mother Casey, lived in a quiet middle-class neighborhood in Orlando with Casey's parents, George and Cindy Anthony, and Casey's brother Lee. George was a former sheriff's deputy who was now working in the security business, and her mother Cindy was a registered nurse. Following high school, 19-year-old Casey had gotten a job at Universal Studios Florida theme park, and it was there that she met a young man named Jesse Grund. Casey and Jesse began dating at the end of 2004, and close to 6 months later, she told him that she was pregnant with Caylee, and he was the father. Now, Casey had kept her pregnancy a secret up until this point. She hadn't told anyone, not even her parents. In fact, she didn't even come out with this information until her brother Lee confronted her about it. At first, Jesse told Casey that he thought they were too young to raise a child, and he thought that they should give the baby up for adoption. But according to him, Casey said there was no way she was going to carry a child around for 9 months and give birth just to give that child up to someone else. So they decided to keep her, and Caylee was born in August of 2005. However, upon Jesse taking a paternity test, it was revealed that he was not actually Caylee's father. But he still loved the little girl like she was his own. And he ended up proposing to Casey on New Year's Eve, and she said yes. Casey would later reveal that she knew her entire pregnancy that Jesse was not the baby's father. However, she kept it from him because she said she had actually gotten raped at a party she had gone to, and that's how she had gotten pregnant. Only 5 months after Casey and Jesse got engaged, Casey would break off the engagement, saying that she was happier on her own and she loved Caylee more than Jesse. And this was even though Casey's parents said that she seemed like her absolute happiest right after Jesse proposed to her. George and Cindy, Caylee's grandparents, were also dealing with their own relationship issues around this time, and they had been thinking about getting divorced. This had come after George had lost his well-paying job and began to rack up lots of gambling debt. The couple had even separated for a few months and divorce papers had been drawn up. But when Caylee turned 10 months old, George decided to go back to the Anthony home and help raise his granddaughter. On June 15th, 2008, over Father's Day weekend, Casey would take Caylee to go visit her great-grandfather who was in the nursing home. This would be the last time that anyone outside the Anthony house would see Caylee alive. The following morning, George would see Casey and Caylee hanging around the house and having breakfast before he headed off to work. When both George and Cindy returned home from work later that day, neither Caylee or Casey were at the house. But this wasn't very unusual because Casey would often take off overnight and bring Caylee with her. She'd also sent her mother Cindy a text message saying that she was working late and that Caylee was at a babysitter's. But then neither Casey or Caylee returned the next day or the day after that. Getting rather worried, Cindy decided that it was time to call up Casey and see where she and Caylee were. Casey told her they were just staying with a friend. But then the excuses began to carry on for weeks. However, Cindy and George continued to accept the excuses that Casey was feeding them, saying they had no reason not to believe her. Then, about a week after they had last seen Caylee and Casey, George would bump into Casey at the family home. But she was alone. Caylee was not with her. And at this time, George confronted his daughter about a couple of gas cans that had been stolen out of the shed in their yard. And he believed that it was Casey who had taken them. Following that run-in, despite the fact that Cindy was still in touch with Casey on a regular basis, they would not see her for weeks. On June 28, 2008, over a week after Caylee had last been seen, Casey's white Pontiac Sunfire was towed and impounded by Johnson's wrecker. This came after it had been left abandoned in front of a check-cashing store in Orlando. George and Cindy wouldn't go pick up the car until weeks later on July 15th. And when George came within 3 feet of the car, he said that he smelled a very strong and concerning odor. Since he had previously been a sheriff's deputy, he said the smell was very familiar, and he believed that it was the scent of human decomposition. Because George had not seen his daughter Casey or his granddaughter Caylee in weeks, he was concerned it might be one of them. But when he opened the car trunk, much to his relief, George did not find any bodies. He instead found a white bag full of trash, including an old pizza box, which was loaded with maggots. However, even after he removed this bag from the car, the odor was still so strong that he had to drive it home with all the windows rolled down. And once he did get back home, he kept all the windows down, opened the sunroof, and pulled the car into the garage. George would also say that around this time, he noticed a subtle stain on the spare tire cover that was in the trunk of the car. And looking back, he said that he should have immediately called police at that point, but he didn't. And Casey's mother, Cindy, would later come out and say that she had actually gone to the tow truck company a few days after the car had been recovered. And at that point, she had asked them if they thought that there was a dead body in the car. According to Cindy, they said no. However, the worker who had towed the Pontiac would later say that he indeed had smelled an awful smell coming from the car that he believed to be that of human decomposition. So after retrieving the car and still not knowing where either Casey or Caylee were, Cindy decided that she needed to take action. Finally, she was going to confront Casey face to face, but the problem was she didn't know where her daughter was located. That's until Cindy noticed that a friend of Casey's had left her resume on the front seat of the car, and it had her phone number on it. So Cindy grabbed that number and called up the friend. The friend told Cindy that she had seen Casey hours earlier and knew where she was staying. The friend then agreed to take Cindy there. So when Cindy arrived at the home where Casey was staying, she asked her immediately where her granddaughter Caylee was. And Casey told her that she was with a babysitter. So Cindy said, "Okay, let's go pick her up." But Casey, of course, had an excuse waiting and told her mother that it was too late in the evening. At this point, Cindy was not believing a word that her daughter said and decided she needed to give her an ultimatum. She told Casey she was either going with her right then and there to pick up Caylee, or she was going to bring her down to the police station and find someone else to go get Caylee with her. Concerningly, Casey said, "Bring me to the police station."
Hello.
Hi, I drove to the police department here on Pershing, but you guys are closed. I need to bring someone into the police department. Can you tell me where the closest one I can come into?
What are you trying to accomplish by bringing them to the station?
I have a 22-year-old person that has grand theft sitting in my auto with me.
So the 22-year-old person stole something?
Yes.
Is this a relative?
Yes.
Where did they steal it from?
My car and also money.
Okay, is this your son?
Daughter.
Okay, so your daughter stole money from your car?
No, my car was stolen. We've retrieved it today. We found out where it was at. I've retrieved it. I've got that, and I've got affidavit for my banking account. I want to bring her in. I want to press charges.
Shortly after that phone call, Cindy would hear Casey whispering to her brother Lee. She told him that she had last seen her daughter 31 days ago because a babysitter had kidnapped her. Upon hearing this, Cindy panicked and called emergency services again.
My daughter finally admitted that the baby's in the store. I need to find her.
Your daughter admitted that the baby is where?
But the babysitter took her a month ago that my daughter's been looking for. I told you my daughter was missing for a month. I just found her today, but I can't find my granddaughter. And she just admitted to me that she's been trying to find her herself. There's something wrong. I found my daughter's car today, and it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car.
Okay, what is the 3-year-old's name?
Caylee, Caylee Anthony.
Caylee Anthony?
Yes.
Okay, is she white, black, or Hispanic?
She's white.
How long has she been missing for?
I have not seen her since the 7th of June.
What is her date of birth?
8/9/2000. Oh God, she's 3. She's 2005. George Kaylee's missing. Kaylee's missing. Casey says Danny took her a month ago. She's been missing for a month.
Is your daughter there?
Yes.
Can I speak with her?
Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Hi. What can you tell me what's going on a little bit?
I'm sorry?
Can you tell me a little bit what's going on?
My daughter's been missing for the last 31 days.
And you know who has her?
I know who has her. I've tried to contact her. I actually received a phone call today, now from a number that is no longer in service. I did get to speak to my daughter for about a minute.
Okay, did you guys call and report a vehicle stolen?
Yes, my mom did.
Okay, so there's been a vehicle stolen too?
No, this was my vehicle.
What vehicle was stolen?
It's a 98 Pontiac Sunfire.
Okay, I have deputies on the way to you right now for that. But now your 3-year-old, okay, your 3-year-old daughter is missing. Caylee Anthony.
Yes.
White female.
Anthony. Yes, white female.
3 years old, 8/9/2005 is her date of birth?
Yes.
And you last saw her a month ago?
31 days. It's been 31 days.
Why are you calling now? Why didn't you call 31 days ago?
I've been looking for her and have gone through other resources to try to find her, which was stupid.
When the police arrived, Casey told them that she had dropped off her daughter Caylee with her babysitter, who was named Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez, before she then headed into work at Universal Studios. Casey claimed that when she later returned to pick Caylee up, no one was home. So she had called Zenaida's phone but discovered that it was disconnected. However, instead of calling her parents or the police, Casey claimed that she just decided to wait on the steps for a few hours. Then, when no one showed up, she decided to go investigate on her own. And she had been investigating for the last 31 days, but had never contacted police. Casey would go on to claim that this Zenaida had actually been Caylee's nanny for the last 2 years. And she had met Zanny the nanny through a coworker of hers named Jeffrey Michael Hopkins, whom she had worked with at Universal Studios. Casey also claimed that this man named Jeffrey was her wealthy boyfriend. But when police took Casey to the apartment where she said she had last dropped off her daughter with the nanny Zenaida, they found that the apartment had actually been abandoned for close to 5 months at that point. So Casey decided to then lead investigators to an apartment building where she said Zenaida had lived 2 years prior, but they quickly found out that it was actually a senior living facility. After this failed attempt, the mother then brought investigators to an apartment building where she said that Zenaida's mother lived. But no one in the condo complex knew either the babysitter Zenaida or Zenaida's mother. The investigators would then return to the first apartment complex and go through the resident list. There was no Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez there. However, they would discover that there was a Zenaida Gonzalez who had actually applied to live there months prior. So they found her phone number and called her up, and she denied knowing Casey or the Anthonys at all. This woman also said she had no idea where Casey possibly could have gotten her name from. Police would quickly discover that this was not the only lie that Casey was feeding to them. The man whom she said she had met Zanny the nanny through, Jeffrey, told police that he did not date Casey and only knew her from high school. Jeffrey also did not work at Universal Studios, didn't know Zanny, and in fact didn't even have any children himself. Casey, however, continued on with her lies, and she confidently led police to Universal Studios headquarters, where she was able to get buzzed in by saying that she had forgot her ID. She then led police around the building, apparently looking for a convincing open office to claim as her own. But when she didn't find one and came to the end of the hall, she suddenly stopped and admitted that she had been lying. She told police that she actually did not even work at Universal Studios. She had, but it had been over a year since she'd worked there. Frustrated, officers asked her why she would lead them on a wild goose chase when her 2-year-old daughter was missing. Casey told them that she lied because she was scared and she knew that her mother, Cindy, would never forgive her for losing Caylee. And she continued to keep up the ruse that Zanny the nanny was real and she had taken Caylee a month prior. Now, some people believe that Casey actually made up the name Zanny after the street name for the drug Xanax, speculating that Casey possibly could have given Caylee some of this and accidentally overdosed her, which killed her. Now, Casey had a habit of habitually lying as well as engaging in petty theft, and her parents, George and Cindy, had a habit of enabling this behavior. For example, Casey actually wasn't able to graduate high school on time due to her excessive truancy. However, George and Cindy had covered this fact up and threw her a graduation party anyways. Casey also had a history of stealing from both her family and friends. She had in the past stolen from her mother's purse, hacked her mother's bank account, and even opened up credit cards in Cindy's name without her knowledge. Casey had even raided her own daughter's piggy bank at one point and emptied her savings account that had nearly $400 in it. Her father, George, would say that if Casey was not stealing money, she was borrowing it from her parents. And this is regardless of the fact that they already completely provided for her and Caylee. But the entire family actually had a history of money problems. George not only had his issues with gambling, but he would also tell investigators that he had fallen for a foreign romance email scam. But he had never told his wife Cindy about this and had lied to her, saying that he had lost his money gambling. Both George and Cindy claim that George's many lies about his gambling is what taught Casey to be a liar. Casey had even recently stolen money from her own grandmother. In fact, Cindy had confronted her about this just the day prior to Caylee disappearing. Cindy had threatened Casey and told her she was going to kick her out and gain custody of Caylee. After their confrontation at Universal Studios, investigators took Casey to the county jail, where she was held and charged with child neglect, lying to police, and obstructing an investigation. Caylee's grandmother, Cindy, immediately began conducting multiple TV interviews in an attempt to locate her granddaughter. The same night as her arrest, July 16th, Casey would call her mother from jail. And she started the conversation off with a snide remark saying, "Mom, I just saw your nice little cameo on TV." Infuriatingly, Casey only seems to care about one thing during this phone call. And it was not her 2-year-old daughter, Caylee, but rather she was concerned about speaking with her new boyfriend, Tony Lazzaro, and making sure that things were okay with them.
Just saw your nice little cameo on TV.
Which one?
What do you mean, which one?
Which one? I did 4 different ones, and I don't know. I haven't seen them all. I've only seen 1 or 2 so far.
You don't know what my involvement is and stuff?
Casey.
Mom.
What?
No.
I don't know what your involvement is, sweetheart. You're not telling me where she's at.
Because I don't f***ing know where she's at. Are you kidding me?
Casey, don't waste your call to
No.
scream and holler at me.
Waste my call sitting in, the jail?
Whose fault is
bunks are?
Whose fault is you sitting in the jail? You're blaming me that you're sitting in the jail?
Not
Blame
my
yourself
fault.
for telling lies. You mean it's not your fault? What do you mean it's not your fault, sweetheart? If you'd have told them the truth and not lied about everything, they wouldn't...
Do me a favor, just tell me what Tony's number is. I don't want to talk to you right now. Forget it.
I don't have his number.
We'll get it from Lee because I know Lee's at the house. I saw Mallory's car was out front. It was just on the news. They were just live outside the house.
I know they were.
Well?
Well?
Can you get Tony's number for me so I can call him?
Hey?
Hey, can you give me Tony's number?
I can do that. I don't know what real good it's going to do you at this point.
Well, I'd like to talk to him anyway.
Okay.
Because I called to talk to my mother, and it's f***ing waste. Oh, by the way, I don't want any of you coming up here when I have my first hearing for bond and everything else. Like, don't even waste your time coming up here.
You know, you're making it real tough for anybody to want to try to, even if issue with giving you somebody's phone number. You're not even letting me finish.
Well, Let's go ahead.
You're asking me for Tony's phone number so you can call him, and then you immediately want to start pressing towards me and saying, don't even worry about coming up here for all this stuff and trying to cut us out.
I'm not trying to cut anybody out.
I'm not going around and around with you. You know, that's pretty pointless. I'm not going to put everybody else through the same stuff that you've been putting the police and everybody else through for the last 24 hours and the stuff you've been putting Mom through for the last 4 or 5 weeks. I'm done with that. So you can tell me what's going on. Christina would love to talk to you because she thinks that you will tell her what's going on. Frankly, we're going to find out. Whatever's going on, it's going to be found out. So why not do it now?
There's nothing to find out. There's absolutely nothing to find out, and that's even what I told the detective.
Well, you know, everything
I have no clue where Caylee is. If I knew where Caylee was, do you think any of this would be happening? No.
Anyway, you only got a couple minutes for this, so I'm not going to let you completely waste it. Here's Christina. She thinks she can get through.
No, I want Tony's number. I'm not talking to anybody else.
Hello?
Hi, I'm glad everybody's at my house. I'll have to call you later. I'll have to call somebody to get your number. Do me a favor, get my brother back because I need Tony's number.
Okay, is there anything I can do for you?
I'm sitting in jail. There's nothing anybody can do right now.
Well, I'm just trying to be...
Oh, I know you are, honey. I absolutely know that you are, and I appreciate everything that you're trying to do, but I'd like to call Tony. He's not at my house, is he?
No,
okay.
No, it's just me and your parents and Lee.
Okay, well, can you do me a favor and get my brother back or get the number from him, please?
Does Tony have anything to do with Caylee?
No, nothing.
Okay, so why do you want to talk to Tony? You probably don't want to tell me, do you?
Huh?
You probably don't want to tell me, do you?
I didn't hear what you said.
I said, does Tony have anything to do with Caylee?
No, Tony had nothing to do with Caylee.
Oh, so why do you want to talk to him? You probably don't want to tell me.
He's my boyfriend, and I want to actually try to sit and talk to him because I didn't get a chance to talk to him earlier because I got arrested on whim today. Because they're blaming me for stuff that I never would do, that I didn't do.
Okay. Well, I'm on your side, you know that.
Oh, honey, I know that. I just want to talk to Tony, get a little bit of...
Casey, you have to tell me if you know anything about Caylee.
Sweetheart,
if anything happens to Caylee, Casey, I'll die. You understand? I'll die. If anything happens to that baby.
Oh, my God. Calling you guys? Waste. Huge waste. Honey, I love you. You know I would not let anything happen to my daughter. If I knew where she was, this wouldn't be going on.
Well, how come everybody's saying you're lying?
Because nobody's listening to anything that I'm saying. The media completely misconstrued everything that I said. Detectives told them they got all of their information from me, yet at the same time, they're twisting stuff. They've already said they're going to pin this on me if they don't find Caylee.
So as you can hear, Casey's main concern was smoothing things over with her boyfriend and the fact that she was in jail. There was no concern for her daughter, Caylee, at all. Within hours of Casey's arrest on July 16th, the story went national, and then photos began to surface online. These photos had been taken during the time that Caylee was supposedly missing, and they showed Casey out dancing and partying. Casey had even participated in a hot body contest at Fusion nightclub in Orlando just 4 days after Caylee vanished. She had also been stealing money and doing excessive shopping during this time. And to top it all off, Casey got a tattoo on her back that read Bella Vita, which means beautiful life. Multiple friends would say that Casey seemed normal, happy, and upbeat during the time that Caylee had been gone. One of her friends even said that she and Casey had been laughing together, and at one point, Casey exclaimed, "Oh my God, I'm such a good liar." While Casey was sitting in jail refusing to say where Caylee was, more than 1,000 volunteers from Orlando and beyond gathered to search for 2-year-old Caylee. They focused in on a 25-mile radius of the Anthony home, as cell phone records had indicated that Casey had not left that area during the entire month that Caylee was supposedly missing.
My granddaughter, she'll say Caylee Marie Anthony. Might not be Anthony. Oh, how old are you? I'm 2.5. She does that. I have Tinker and Chili. That's our 2 dogs. And we have a cat named Penny. She'll say Pepe. That is our granddaughter. I miss those little things that she did day in and day out with me. I miss that.
All I want is my granddaughter back. Come here. Come see Grammy. We live, breathe all day long. What are we going to do? Right. And what are we going to do if we don't find her soon? Because all of our hearts are breaking every day.
When cadaver dogs were brought into the Anthony home, they immediately alerted on the smell of human decomposition coming from the trunk of the car. They also alerted to Caylee's playhouse that was in the Anthony's backyard. Investigators would then find a hair inside the trunk of the car that was microscopically similar to those found on Caylee's hairbrush. And this piece of hair showed signs of decomposition. An air sample was also taken from the trunk, and it was shown to have chemical compounds consistent with human decomposition. Additionally, forensic analysis found shockingly high levels of chloroform in the trunk, though it would later be determined that these levels would be the same levels that were found in most household cleaners, so it wasn't really as high as they originally thought it was. Then investigators would find something extremely disturbing when they were looking through the Anthony's computer search history. Apparently, back in March, someone had done a Google search for neck breaking and household weapons. A website for missing children was also searched. There had more recently been a search done for chloroform and some time spent searching through the results that brought up. Additionally, on the last day that Caylee was seen alive by anybody, June 16, 2008, someone in the Anthony home had done a search for foolproof suffocation, then appeared to read an article that discussed murder by poison and suffocation by smothering. The same night that Casey was arrested, the entire search history was deleted. And according to cell phone and computer records, those searches could have only been done by one person. As George had said, Caylee and Casey were home when he left for work, and cell phone records show that he left the home at 2:30 p.m. on the 16th. At 2:49 p.m., AOL Instant Messenger was signed into on the family's computer, under Casey's username and password. 2 minutes later, the search for foolproof suffocation was done. Casey was the only one home. And again, 1 minute after that search was done, the computer logged into Casey's MySpace. Shortly after this, at 3:04 p.m., George would call Casey. He had just arrived at work. A half hour after that, Casey's new boyfriend, Anthony Lazzaro, called her. But it went unanswered. Then at 4:10 p.m., Casey tried to call her mother, Cindy, 6 times. All of these calls would go unanswered as well. Just minutes after making these phone calls, Casey was in her car, headed to her boyfriend Tony's home. She seemed in good spirits, and like nothing out of the ordinary was going on. Just hours later, she and Tony would be seen at Blockbuster, browsing movies together. Caylee was not with them. And speaking of Tony, investigators would also uncover messages that Casey had sent to Tony prior to Caylee going missing. In the messages, Casey, who sometimes worked at a club, wrote that spending the day with Caylee was 10 times more exhausting than working a 12-hour event. And she would call her daughter a snothead. Then, on July 7th, Casey had made a post on her MySpace that said, "What is given can be taken away. Everyone lies, everyone dies. Life will never be easy." So this new boyfriend of hers, Tony Lazzaro, Casey had actually just started dating a few weeks prior to Caylee going missing, and she had met him on MySpace. Tony had been attending Full Sail University in Orlando and would often go out partying with Casey. He had also moved her into his apartment that he shared with his roommates during the time that Caylee had been missing. He had apparently met Caylee a few times before she disappeared, but whenever he asked about her during the month that she was gone, Casey was always ready with some sort of excuse as to where she was. She was either at Disney World or she was at the beach, but she was with someone else all the time. Investigators would also interview the Anthony's next-door neighbor, who said that on the day that Caylee had gone missing, June 16th, Casey had backed her car up into the Anthony's garage, which was unusual for her to do. Then 2 days after the toddler vanished, she went over to the neighbors and asked to borrow a shovel, saying that she had to dig up a bamboo root. So given all this new evidence and information, Casey was indicted on a charge of first-degree murder, and prosecutors were seeking the death penalty. But unbelievably, Caylee's grandparents, George and Cindy, were under the belief that their granddaughter was being held by a group of tough characters that were associated with the babysitter Zenaida. Characters who were threatening Caylee and preventing her from talking, they said. Which is absolutely insane given everything that's already been found and the many lies that Caylee has told. At her bond hearing, her parents even said they would do everything in their power to support their daughter and find Caylee. By August, Cindy and George were getting frustrated, and they claimed that police had given up on looking for their granddaughter Caylee and were more interested in implicating their daughter Caylee for murder. Even though they were showing their daughter Caylee their support, George and Cindy, of course, still wanted to know where their granddaughter was. And this is how Caylee speaks to them when confronted about it in jail. Again, she plays the victim when her 2-year-old is missing.
Well, let me have you speak to Mom, okay? Now she's right here. She's pulling at the phone. Hold on.
All right. Hi, sweetie. Hi, Mom. We're not doing well, Case. None of us. Lee's been sick. Dad's blown up at the media. Yeah, I heard. Well, someone just said that Caylee was dead this morning, that she drowned in the pool. That's the newest story out there. Surprise, surprise. We need to have something to go on. Mom, I don't have anything. I'm sorry. I've been here a month. I've been here a month today. Do you understand how I feel? Hold on, sweetheart. Settle down, baby. Nobody's letting me speak. You want me to talk? Then all right, I'll listen 3 seconds to see something. Sweetheart. I'm not in control over any of this because I don't know what the hell's going on. I don't know what's going on. My entire life has been taken from me. Everything has been taken from me. You don't understand. Everybody wants me to have answers. I don't have any answers because I don't know what's going on. I have no one to talk to except Jose when he comes. It's the only person that I can talk to right now because I can't even say anything to you guys besides telling you that I love you. I want Caylee. Things like that. And that's not even getting put on the air, which it should be. It's everything else, everything that I'm not saying. Again, that's all I could do was backtrack. I can't backtrack on anything. A month I've been removed from the situation. You guys are not understanding my side on this, and I'm sorry.
Shortly after this call, Caylee would be released from jail on a $500,000 bond. A famous California bounty hunter named Leonard Padilla had paid this bond with the hopes that Caylee would lead him to Caylee. He even made a public announcement after bailing her out, saying that he believed Caylee could possibly still be alive. But just 10 days later, Leonard's view had drastically changed, and he called Caylee a self-centered, egotistical brat. Apparently, she had given him the same bullshit that she gave police, and he wasn't buying it. When he called her out on it, she yelled at him and told him to get out of her house. But only a week after she had been bailed out, Caylee was again being rearrested, this time for fraud. Back in July, one of Caylee's best friends had lent her car, and during that time, Caylee had opened up the glove compartment and stolen a checkbook, then gone out on a big shopping spree. So months went by with no new information, and Caylee was still not speaking about where her daughter was. Then, in December of 2008, 5 months after the toddler had originally gone missing, only about a quarter mile away from the Anthony's home, a meter reader who was working in the area came across a plastic trash bag, and when he bent down to pick it up, a tiny skull rolled out. Upon further inspection, the worker noticed that there was duct tape over the skull's mouth, nose, and jaw. He immediately contacted the authorities. It would quickly be determined that these remains did indeed belong to 2-year-old Caylee Anthony.
That was cute.
Her remains had been found in a wetland that was previously inaccessible during the summer months when they had been searching for her, as it had been waist deep in water due to record rainfall. And not only did she have duct tape over her nose and mouth, but her little body had also been put inside a laundry bag, then inside of 2 trash bags and duct taped up. Caylee's Winnie the Pooh blanket was also inside the bag with her. That bag had then been thrown into the woods carelessly behind a rotting log. There was no way this was not a homicide. When Casey heard the news that her daughter's body had been recovered, she had a panic attack and needed to be sedated. After that, she would be placed under psychological observation. And only a month after Caylee's body was found, her grandfather George would try to take himself out of this world. But police would find him just in time and take him to a hospital where he would recover. Casey would finally go to trial for her daughter Caylee's murder in May of 2011. And by that time, her story had completely changed. Instead of her story that Caylee had been kidnapped by her nanny, she was now saying that she accidentally drowned in the family's backyard swimming pool. And her father George had forced her to cover up the horrible accident. The thing about this narrative is that Casey had actually spent time in jail with a woman by the name of April Whalen, who also had a toddler close in age to Caylee. And he had died in a drowning accident that was remarkably similar to the one that the defense was now claiming was the cause of Caylee's death, including the fact that the grandfather had discovered this child. The defense also alleged that George had molested Casey when she was younger, thereby igniting her habit of lying to cover up all the pain. George, of course, adamantly denies these claims, and there was zero proof to support it. Later on down the road, Casey would even say that George had actually tried to cover up Caylee's death because he had been inappropriately touching her as well. The other issue with this version of events is that if Casey's father George was so awful to her and Caylee as she claimed, then why would she have covered up the accidental drowning of her precious baby girl just for him and not called 911 and gone out partying and shopping just days later? It makes no sense. The defense also tried to throw Lee, Casey's brother, under the bus and say that he had molested her as well. Her boyfriend at the time, Anthony Lazaro, claimed that Casey did tell him that one time she had woken up in bed to her brother Lee feeling her up. But that was just what Casey had told him. So other than that, these claims were also completely baseless. The defense additionally claimed that the utility worker who had found Caylee's body had actually found it months earlier, but had held onto it and placed it in the area where it was found so he could get more reward money. Now, during the trial, Caylee's grandmother Cindy would be called to the stand, and she would say that she had actually been the one to research chloroform on the family's computer. According to her, she'd looked up chlorophyll out of concern for her family pet who had been eating plants from the backyard. And she had then searched chloroform because of its relation to chlorophyll. But given timestamps at Cindy's work that day, it's highly unlikely that she was able to make these searches. Cindy would also testify that the stain that was found in the trunk had actually been there when the family purchased the Pontiac 8 years prior. Then Cindy went on to say that anytime Caylee would fall and get hurt, her mother Casey was right there. She was sure that if anything had happened to Caylee, Casey would have called 911. When Casey's brother Lee took the stand to testify, he said that Casey had kept Caylee from the family because she was a spiteful bitch. He also described the smell in Casey's car as offensive, and he believed that it was the smell of Caylee's decomposing body. Lee would also testify and say that when a family pet died when he and Casey were younger, their father, George, would bury the pets in a similar fashion to the way that Caylee had been buried. Wrapped in a blanket, then put in a trash bag that was taped and buried. Lee also denied that the stains in the Pontiac Sunfire had been there since the family had purchased it back in 2000. And he knew this because he had been the original driver of that vehicle. Casey's ex-fiancé, Jesse Grund, would also speak, and he said that he had noticed major changes in the mother after they broke off their engagement. He said Caylee had went from being someone who was focused on being a mother, starting a family, being a family-oriented homebody, to an individual who loved to party and loved all the attention being on her. The Caylee he now saw was not the same warm, loving Caylee who had sat at his parents' dinner table, watched football with them on Sundays, and played with Caylee. Other friends of Caylee's would also testify that she had always seemed to be a loving and devoted mother to Caylee. Killing her didn't make sense. The Caylee they knew wasn't even capable of hurting Caylee, never mind killing her. But if that's true, then why did Caylee have duct tape on her nose and mouth when she was found? The only reason for that would be intent to kill. Therefore, the prosecution didn't buy it. They believed that Caylee felt burdened by being a mother and didn't want to live that life any longer. So she decided to sacrifice her daughter to get back the life that she really did want. So the prosecution was claiming that the duct tape had clearly been used as a weapon for suffocation. But the defense was saying that the duct tape had actually been placed there after Caylee was dead to keep her jawbone from separating from the rest of her skull. Then it was time for George Anthony to testify, and on top of denying the allegations that the defense had set before him, he also spoke about the gas cans that had been missing from his shed shortly after Caylee had gone missing. When he had confronted his daughter about these gas cans, she actually had them in her car and she had gone to retrieve them, then given them back to George. Before the cans had been taken, George testified that he had put duct tape on one of them. When they were returned, there was no duct tape. And according to the prosecution, this was a rare type of duct tape, the same type that was found on Caylee's body. So even though it was clear to everyone who was following this case that Caylee had something to do with her daughter's death and disappearance, on July 5th, 2011, she was found not guilty by a jury. This was after nearly 6 weeks of testimony and over 400 pieces of evidence. Many of the jurors said they had to come back with not guilty because they could not prove how Caylee had died. Caylee was, however, found guilty of 4 counts of lying to police, and she received 4 years in prison along with a $4,000 fine. However, she was given credit for time already served while she was awaiting her trial and credit for good behavior. Therefore, Caylee Anthony was released from jail only 10 days after her trial ended, on July 17th, 2011. And when she was, throngs of protesters waited for her outside the jailhouse. The public was outraged that she had gotten away with murder, the murder of her sweet 2-year-old daughter. Another important thing that wouldn't be discovered until much later was that Caylee was said to be in an inappropriate sexual relationship with her attorney, Jose Baez. It's also said that Caylee had admitted to Jose that she had killed Caylee because she was jealous of the special bond that her mother, Cindy, shared with her. While Caylee Anthony was acquitted of criminal charges of murder and aggravated child abuse by a jury in Florida, Florida's Department of Child and Families came to another conclusion. In August 2011, they released a report saying that Caylee was indeed responsible for her daughter Caylee's death. The report concluded that her failure to act for a month to find the child was not in her best interest. If anything, it delayed the investigation into finding Caylee. What this means, however, I'm not sure. As far as I know, she hasn't been ordered to not be around kids. And I highly doubt, knowing child services, if she has another child, this determination will affect their involvement in any way. But I could be wrong. A couple months after her trial ended, Caylee Anthony was also ordered to pay back over $217,000 in investigative costs. She wouldn't end up paying it, however, since Caylee filed for bankruptcy in 2013. Just last year, there was actually a new documentary, which I say loosely, made with Caylee Anthony as the star. In it, she continues her lies and tells the public that George killed Caylee and she just helped him to cover it up. However, after how she acted when Caylee went missing and all the facts that we've already been presented with, not a word of what she says should be believed. George and Cindy Anthony still have conflicting perceptions of what happened to Caylee and the role that Caylee played in the mysterious tragic events that followed on June 15, 2008. Cindy maintains that Caylee drowned in the swimming pool, which she clearly knows is not true. And George's theory is that Caylee gave Caylee some sort of sedative and accidentally overdosed her. He says that he believes that Casey then put Caylee's body into the trunk for a few days because she panicked and didn't know what to do. Both of them have been given polygraph tests and both have passed. And Casey's mother, Cindy, still has sporadic contact with her daughter. George does not. And I don't blame him, given the accusations she put forward in court. A memorial service was held for Caylee Anthony following the discovery of her body. It was held on February 10th, 2009, and more than 1,000 people showed up at an Orlando church to remember her. There, they played her favorite songs, Jesus Loves Me and You Are My Sunshine, and they shared their favorite memories of little Caylee. She was then cremated, and for a few years, Casey wore the ashes in a necklace around her neck, but reportedly stopped wearing it around 2013.
The moment I first saw Caylee Marie, and the instant she was placed into my arms, she stole my heart forever. She wouldn't wake up crying, she'd wake up laughing. She'd wake up cooing, she'd wake up just smiling. She was always a happy child. She loved her family very much. She loved her animals. She loved her Tinker and her Tilly. Her and I used to spend a lot of time together in the pool, and I'm going to miss those days. My favorite times. My favorite times when she would come in on Sunday morning and wake me up, and her face would be right in my face. Cece, wake up. She'd be right there. Every night before we'd go to bed, she'd go outside and she'd look up at the stars and want to say goodnight to the stars and the moon. And if it was a cloudy night, we'd just say, well, the stars have already gone to bed. They're covered up with a blanket that God gave them because they were cold. Oh, man. Hearing her call out my name and telling me how much that she loved me, talking to her on the phone. Every night I would drive home from work, and she would tell me about her day. Watching her eyes light up when her JoJo came into the room.
I stand here today, proud to be the grandfather of Caylee Marie Anthony. I'm also standing here today proud to have Cindy by my side, to have Lee up here with me, to have Mallory, to have my mother-in-law, my brothers-in-law, my father. I wish my father was here today. My mother can't be here. I'm thankful for friends. I'm thankful for Sherry and Dennis. I'm thankful for everyone that's here today to pay tribute to a beautiful little girl who not only meant the world to me, but meant the world to my family, and so many of you that never got a chance to actually hug her, smell her hair, smell the sweet sweat when she came in from outside. To hear her call me JoJo. Sure, I was Grandpa, but I was JoJo to her. Some days when I wouldn't maybe just pay attention to her for just a second, she would get right on my face and, JoJo? Grandpa JoJo, George. She knew me. She knew how to push me to smile at her and hug her. I miss that kiss on the cheek, that special hug that I tell everyone it's so great to get a hug from someone, but to get a hug from a small child, that gives me energy like you couldn't imagine. Herky sang a song here just a few months ago. Everyone has sang today from their heart, from their gifts that God gave to them. The music that was played. The pastors that are here today to not only lift me up, but to lift all of us up. It's God's day. It's Caylee Marie Anthony's day today. I've talked a lot about Caylee to many, many of you at our command center that we had. I miss that command center. But you know something? The command center needed to close at one time. And that was hard for me. And it still is hard for me to drive by different places where we had our tent, our gray building where we held T-shirts, buttons, wristbands, banners of not only Caylee but other missing children. There are people here today that are family united, and what that family united are, they're missing their children right now. And if there's anything at all that any of us can ever do is to look for these children. There's children out there that are missing, that need to be brought home no matter what. No matter what. At the Eastside Baptist Church, there was banners that were behind me, and I always talked about them each time that we had a prayer vigil. And on my right, behind my right shoulder, there was one that said, "Doing whatever it takes." I took that every single day to do whatever it took to find Caylee, to keep my family together, also to look out at each and every one that came to see me, or even today, and tell you, hug your family, hug those children. Tell them how much you love them, because I'll tell you, in a second, they can be gone. And the little things that they do, when they're not around to do them, your heart breaks even more. Caylee Marie Anthony's determination to me, it's going to make you laugh when I tell you this, but I was fortunate, and I am still fortunate, to live in a house with 3 very determined women in my life. Sure, Caylee might be in God's heaven right now, but her presence is still at home with me every day. I can close my eyes and I can see her coming from her bedroom with her silly little glasses on, her beads, whatever it might be, to make me laugh. She was a comedian to me. She cherished not only time that I had with her, but cherished every day that she was around each and every one of us. Friends, family that got a chance to hold her, get a chance to know who she was, to get a chance to smile at this little girl. You would know exactly how I feel right now.
A large 6-foot cross was also placed in the area where Caylee's remains had been discovered in December of 2008, where people left balloons, toys, and words of love for little Caylee. However, it was later dismantled by George and Cindy, and George said it was because they did not want to go back there again. Also, since her death, many states have been passing Caylee's Law, which makes it a felony for a parent or legal guardian to fail to report a missing child, in cases where the parent knew or should have known that the child was possibly in danger. Well, thank you for listening to Caylee's story today. I think it's pretty obvious that Caylee Anthony was responsible for her daughter's death, and she just continues to lie and lie about what happened in June of 2008. I think that Caylee killed Caylee not only because she was jealous of the special bond that her mother Cindy shared with Caylee, but also because she's a cold, uncaring, and vengeful person who's hell-bent on making anybody whom she thinks wronged her pay. She felt like her mother Cindy wronged her because she had threatened to kick Caylee out of the house and take custody of Caylee. So she decided to punish her by taking Caylee away from her forever. So if you like true crime and you want to hear it from me, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button below and turn on your notifications too, so you'll know when I upload a new video, which is at least twice every week. Thanks for watching A Wicked World today. Until next time, take care guys. Bye. Thank you to all the patrons of A Wicked World. Now, there's even more of A Wicked World on Patreon. So check it out at patreon.com/awickedworld or use the Patreon app. You'll have access to exclusive videos each month and more. Any support truly helps to make sure the victims never get forgotten and to highlight the shortcomings of society associated with each case. Do you have a suggestion for a case you'd like to see me cover? If so, send me an email at awickedworldtruecrime@gmail.com.